If you are trying to work out which games this April might actually be worth your time, these are the ones I think are most worth keeping on your radar. The idea here is not just to point at games that look cool, but to give a clearer sense of why they stand out, where the risks are, and who they might actually suit. So rather than trying to cover everything, I wanted to focus on the ones that seem most worth paying attention to. Some of these I'm pretty sold on already, others I'm still a bit unsure about. But either way, I want to get into both what looks good and what might hold them back. Now first up is Pragmata, which is generally pretty interesting, but also feels like one of those games that's really going to depend on how well its systems land with people once they get their hands on it. This is Capcom's new sci-fi action adventure, featuring Hugh and his android companion Diana working together. There is hacking gameplay as a central part of both the combat and the wider exploration experience. Now this is where the uncertainty lies, because from my hands-on experience with the short demo, that side of things felt pretty rough at first, and I can see a lot of people bouncing off there because of it. But the more time I spent with it, the more it did start clicking into place, and after some practice I can see real potential here. However, the clunkiness didn't fully go away in the demo, but it definitely felt much better to play with when I got round to doing a second run. From the other preview impressions I've seen so far, many people are sharing this concern right now, so it looks like we'll have to see how it all comes together in the final game. It also looks like the full game will have a base for upgrades in downtime, and the story setup shown in the demo, with the pair trying to get back to Earth after the incident on the lunar base, does feel like it has some promise. They've revealed some more interesting locations than were in that demo in some of the trailers so far, alongside some more diverse enemy designs, both of which were pretty limited in that small slice. So for me, Pragmata feels like it could go really either way, and it's going to come down to how well people get on with the hacking systems, especially since they seem to feed into not just the combat, but the exploration side as well. If you do like action games with a bit of a learning curve, and don't mind something that might take a little time to click with you, this could be a really interesting one. If the hacking never gels for you, I can also see this being a pretty easy one to bounce off of. Pragmata will be coming out April 17th for PC, PS5, Xbox Series and Switch 2. Next up, we've got Mouse PI for Hire, and this is probably the easiest game here to look at and instantly get why people are excited for it. It's a first-person shooter built around that old-school 1930s cartoon look, and it's just got loads of character. But the nice thing is it doesn't feel like the art style is the only thing it has going for it either. Between the jazz noir vibe, the cartoon weapon designs, the movement abilities, and the general energy of it all, feels like a game that really knows what it wants to be. That's why it stands out to me so much, because there just aren't many shooters that feel this distinct right away. It looks fast, expressive, and from what they've shown so far, there seems to be a decent bit of variety there as well, with over 20 levels, power-ups, and even some Metroidvania style traversal mixed in. The only thing I'm really waiting on now is whether the gunplay is going to feel as good as the presentation looks. Because for me, these kind of shooters really live and die on how the combat feels. And with a game this style heavy, there's always that worry that it ends up being all style and no substance. Still, if the gunplay does land, I can very easily see this being one of the more memorable games of the month, especially for people who like their shooters with a bit more flair and personality. Mouse PI for Hire is out on April 16th for PC, PS5, Xbox Series and Switch 2, with details on the older gen version still to come later. Now for a very different kind of pick, but one that still really stands out to me. Outbound is basically a cozy home on wheels game, where you're driving around, building out your camper van, gathering resources, and trying to live sustainably off-grid. And honestly, the fantasy of that is just really appealing. There's something about the idea of slowly turning your van into this personalised little moving home that is immediately very easy to get on board with. It also helps that it looks like it's leaning pretty hard into that cozy road trip vibe. You got the building, the customization, the co-op side with up to 4 players, and even a dog companion you could pick up during your travels. The thing I'm less sure about is how much legs it's going to have in the long run, because if all you're really doing is driving around, collecting resources, and building more and more onto it, I do wonder how long that loop stays interesting. That's especially true if the survival side and the actual driving don't end up feeling that satisfying on their own. So this is really one that comes down to whether the systems around that fantasy are strong enough to support it. If they are, I can see this being a really nice chill game to sink time into, especially with a couple of friends. But if not, I can also see it being one of those games where the vibe carries it for a while before fizzling out once the cracks start to show. Outbound is coming out on April 23rd for PC, PS5, Xbox Series and Switch 2. After that, we've got Tomodachi Life Living the Dream, which is probably the weirdest game in this whole lineup. The basic appeal of this one is pretty immediate. You make your own Miis, throw them all onto an island together, and then just watch the chaos unfold. That alone already feels like a recipe for a lot of funny moments, especially when the whole thing seems to be leaning hard into silliness, drama, relationships, and just general weirdness. What I do like here is how much room there seems to be for making it your own as well. You're not just creating the characters, but also shaping the island around them, and even doing things like making your own textures for buildings, clothes, and other bits of the world. That kind of customization makes it feel like there could be a lot of personality in how your island ended up turning out. thing I'm still less sure on is how much depth there actually is once the novelty starts wearing off, because this absolutely looks like the kind of game that can be really funny early on, but whether it's got enough permutations and variety to stay interesting over time is the bigger question for me. So this feels like one that could be great for people who like social sandbox games and making their own stories out of game systems, but I'm still a bit cautious on how much longevity it's actually going to have. Tomodachi Life Living the Dream is out on April 16th for Switch and Switch 2. Then we've got Vampire Crawlers, which I can most easily see becoming a bit of an addictive hit. This is a turn-based deck builder spin-off from the Vampire Survivors dev, and honestly it already feels like it has a lot of the same immediate hook that made that game so easy to get sucked into. But instead of just being another Survivors-like, this is taking that same accessible, flashy, and replayable energy and applying it to a card-driven roguelike setup. There's a big part of why I'm so into it, because deck builders have started to feel a bit crowded at this point. This actually looks like it has its own identity. Even from a small amount of the demo, it felt like the kind of game where you can already start seeing the potential for stupidly strong builds and that one more run pull. The only real hesitation I've got is less about this game specifically, and more that deck builders in general have felt oversaturated recently. But honestly, if this lands the way it looks like it could, I can very easily see it breaking through that fatigue. So if you're one of the people who got properly hooked on Vampire Survivors, or you just like deck builders and want one that feels a bit fresher and more chaotic, this is absolutely one I'd keep an eye on. Vampire Crawlers is coming out on April 21st for PC, PS5, Xbox Series, and Switch. And then finally, we've got Saros, which is probably the game in this lineup that I'm most excited for. This is Housemarque's new sci-fi action game, and as someone who loved Returnal, this was always going to be one I had my eye on. Housemarque also feels like one of the few devs who really understand what's good about the PS5 and its controller. With Returnal, things like the haptics, the spatial audio, and especially the adaptive triggers actually felt built into the game properly, rather than just being used for one throwaway mechanic and then forgotten about. It's a big part of why I'm so high on this, because from everything they've shown so far, it does actually look like they're making some smart changes here rather than just trying to do Returnal again. The combat still has that same intense feel to it, but with more tools in your toolbox, more flexibility in how you approach the runs, and things like permanent progression and difficulty modifiers making it seem a bit more approachable too. The one thing I'm slightly less sold on right now is the storytelling side of it. Returnal had such a strong tone and atmosphere to it, and from what I'm seeing so far, I'm not fully sure Saros is hitting quite the same level there. This is still early days on that front. Still, if you liked Returnal or just want a polished action-heavy roguelite from a team that already knows how to make combat feel incredible, this is very easily one of the biggest games to keep an eye on this month. Saros is out on April 30th for PS5. So those are the April games I think are most worth keeping on your radar right now. I'd be really interested to hear which of these you're most sold on, and whether there are any others this month you think I should be paying more attention to. And if you enjoyed the video, a like and a subscribe would really help out.